Soyoto Amuno Noka.
Do you understand anything they're saying?
Oh, yes, Master Luke. Remember that I am fluent in over 6 million forms of communication.
What are you telling them?
In a galaxy of millions of sentient species across thousands of worlds and hundreds of trillions of individuals, communication is essential to the basic functioning of social order and the development of cohesive societies. From laws and trade to war and peace, and everything in between, there has formed some standardized level of communication to facilitate the most mundane social interactions to the most complex treaties and creation of intergalactic governance.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerve herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Galactic Basic Standard.
Galactic Basic Standard, often shortened to Galactic Basic, Galactic Standard, or simply Basic, was the dominant language that spread like a shadow across the galaxy. Spoken by countless beings, it served as the common tongue in a galaxy fractured by war, treachery, and ambition. Wherever power and control were sought, Basic was the language in which deals were struck, alliances forged, and betrayals whispered. It existed in subdialects and species that have adapted their own inflections and accents, such as the Gungans of Naboo, and in some cases could be understood well enough but, due to biological constraints, could not be repeated back, such as the Wookiees.
Old Galactic Standard. In the wake of the Infinite Empire's downfall, the Rakata's former slaves turned on their oppressors with brutal efficiency, eradicating them and seizing their advanced technology to forge new dominions. As the core worlds re-established trade and communication, they coalesced into what would become the First Galactic Republic. To ensure smooth communication with this nascent government, a trade language, later known as Old Galactic Standard, was declared the official tongue for both governance and commerce. Though primarily derived from Old Coruscanti, the native language of the humans of Coruscant, Old Galactic Standard was a linguistic tapestry, blending words from over a dozen other languages, including Duries and Bothese. This hybrid language, born from the needs of traders and spacers, spread across the galaxy, bridging the gap between disparate species. As it gained prominence, it was formally adopted as the language of Coruscant and the Galactic Republic. Over time, Old Galactic Standard evolved into Mid-Galactic Standard, eventually giving rise to Galactic Basic Standard. Even as the galaxy changed, the language endured. During the Pius Day era, it remained in use, and figures such as Arden Lin and Jedi Master Atris could still speak it by the time of the Dark Wars. Under the Galactic Empire, a variant known as Imperial Basic emerged, later adopted by the Rebel Alliance. This language would become the voice of the Alliance of Free Planets. A new republic, the Imperial Remnant, the Galactic Alliance, and the Fel, Sith, and True Empires, ensuring its continued dominance across the galaxy. Bothese, The native tongue of the Bothans and Duris, spoken by the Duros, were both key influences on Old Galactic Standard. The Duros, renowned spacers and traders, helped spread Duris across the stars, making it a crucial component of the developing Basic language. Meanwhile, Bothese left its mark not only on Basic, but also on Dresselese, influencing both its vocabulary and writing system after the Dressalians' first contact with the Bothans. As the galaxy's languages intertwined, they gave birth to a unified mode of communication that would shape galactic civilization for millennia. Mid-Galactic Standard.
By the era of Peshalslok, a holorite active between 15762 BBY and 15609 BBY, the language had undergone such profound changes that it was recognized as a distinct historical phase, later known as Mid-Galactic Standard. This evolution continued as Galactic Basic absorbed further influences, most notably from Dromnir, following the Vultan's entry into the Republic around 14,000 BBY. These ongoing linguistic shifts ultimately gave rise to what is now known as Modern Galactic Basic Standard.
Modern Galactic Standard. Nearly all sentient species that established galactic contact could speak Basic, often in addition to their native or regional tongues. However, certain species lacked the physical ability to vocalize Basic, such as the Polis Massons, Sea-Rook, Puex, Wookiees, and various insectoid races. Most Gamorreans also struggled to speak Basic, though rare exceptions existed. Despite these limitations, understanding Basic was crucial for survival and success in the galaxy, and most beings made an effort to comprehend it. The Tyanis introduced the Ewoks to an enigmatic language, though this did not aid them in understanding Leia Organa, Han Solo, or Luke Skywalker, all of whom spoke Basic. The connection between this language and Basic remains unclear. Additionally, High Galactic, a dialect of Basic, was used to convey reverence and honor, particularly in religious contexts. Basic was primarily written in the Aurebesh script, although the High Galactic alphabet was also sometimes used for more formal or ceremonial purposes. High Galactic.
High Galactic was an ancient language predating the Republic, originally spoken by the colonists of Al-Sakan before 17,000 BBY. During the conflict between the Galactic Republic and the Tyan cluster, High Galactic developed a distinct written form known as the High Galactic alphabet. Over the millennia, this language came to symbolize respect and prestige, often used in formal exchanges between the clergy and lay people. It remained a mark of sophistication, spoken fluently by figures like Sarkev Quest, and serving as the language of the imperial court and elite, where it was familiar to officers from noble families. High Galactic also held a sacred place within the Jedi Order, with many lightsaber forms bearing names derived from it. Its alphabet became a refined alternative to Aurebesh for writing Basic. On the planet Nirayan, the native tongue, Nirayanan, emerged as a hybrid language blending elements of both High Galactic and Basic, reflecting the enduring influence of this ancient tongue across the galaxy.
Dialects and Accents. Throughout the galaxy, diverse cultures develop distinct accents and dialects, each with unique pronunciations and linguistic characteristics.
Barabel accent. Exemplified by Saba Sabatine, this accent lacked the use of I and similar words and often pronounced a letter S as Z.
Corellian accent. Characterized by Han Solo and Wedge Antilles. This accent was so recognizable that Corellians could easily identify one another's speech.
Concord Dawn inflection. Common among Mandalorians, including the Fett family and most clone troopers. Influenced by Mandoa, this accent often pronounced E as I, turning delta into dilta.
Coruscanti accent. Demonstrated by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Palpatine, and Dooku. Common in the core worlds. It was less prevalent among those from outer regions like Padme Amidala in Naboo and Luke Skywalker from Tatooine. However, Amidala and Organa occasionally adopted a slight Coruscanti inflection in formal context.
High Coruscanti, a more refined and posh variant of the Coruscanti accent, often used to convey upper-class sophistication, with a clipped and sometimes pretentious tone. It was also sometimes faked for effect, as with Danny Fayetoni.
Ariaduan accent. Seen in Grand Moff Tarkin, it reflected the influence of Coruscanti Standard and was described as more core than core, highlighting Ariadu's later settlement compared to the core worlds.
Gungan dialect, exemplified by Jar Jar Binks and Roose Tarples.
Kalish accent, represented by General Grievous.
Neomodian accent, noted in Nute Gunray and Rune Hako, and to a lesser extent by Imperial Governor Mariolon Tarko. It featured deep vowel emphasis.
Southeastern Naboo accent, demonstrated by Queen Jamilia, characterized by powerful consonant enunciations.
Yoda's dialect, utilized by Jedi Grandmaster Yoda and other tridactyl species like Yaddle, featuring an object-subject-verb-word order. However, another member of the species, Vandar Tokar, did not use this dialect.
Tawani family dialect, taught to the Ewoks, though it did not enable them to understand Standard Basic when they met the rebels a year later.
Wookiee Ralrashin's Sheerwook, spoken with a speech impediment, making it more understandable to non-Wookiees, learning the language. Some Wookiees with this condition could speak Basic, but at the cost of their Sheerwook.
Brodian accents, often affected by speech impediments like a lisp, as seen in Avara Sukul and Tilo. Rhodians frequently struggled with certain phonemes. High Galactic Alphabet.
The High Galactic Alphabet was a prestigious writing system in the galaxy, distinguished from the more common Arabesh by its frequent use in signatures and among the nobility, often carrying an air of exclusivity. It was predominantly employed to write Galactic Basic Standard and existed in two main forms: a print script with distinct glyphs for each letter, and a cursive style, where strokes flowed together with rounded angles. Although High Galactic usually differentiated between uppercase and lowercase letters, many logos utilized only capital letters. The alphabet originated with the High Galactic language spoken by the Alsacan colonists prior to 17,000 BBY and emerged during the conflict between the Galactic Republic and the Tyan cluster. During the Alsacan conflicts, the alphabet gained widespread use. It evolved from Tyanese script, which added characters invented by the Alscanese, establishing a system independent from Arabesh and related scripts. By circa 222 BBY, the High Galactic alphabet was used by about 1/3 of Galactic Basic writers, and over half of upper-class speakers. Consequently, it was often displayed alongside Arabesh, with High Galactic dominating in advertising and corporate logos for entities such as Industrial Automaton, Corellian Engineering Corporation, and CNR Fleet Systems. The High Galactic alphabet was also utilized in naming starship models like the T-65 X-Wing starfighter, and droid models such as the R2 series of astronomic droids.
Arabesh. Arabesh was a widely used writing system for Galactic Basic Standard, named after its first two letters, Arak and Besh. Employed by major governments like the Galactic Empire and the Confederacy of Independent Systems, Arabesh's origins are believed to trace back to the Rakatan Infinite Empire. The script began to spread across the galaxy during the Alsacan conflicts, approximately 17,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. By 25793 BBY, Arabesh was already in use on the settled worlds, even before first contact with the Rakata, and was found to be identical to the Rakatan version. Typically associated with the common populace, Arabesh was considered less prestigious compared to the High Galactic alphabet, which was linked to nobility and perceived elitism. Luke Skywalker, for instance, learned to read Arabesh by age 4 from educational data tapes given by his Aunt Beru. Arabesh was pervasive throughout the galaxy, appearing on clone trooper LAT gunships like Lucky Leku and Spaceward Ho, private starships such as the freighter Takora, and in various technological interfaces, including N-1 starfighters' cockpits and macro binoculars. It also featured prominently in the Grand Army of the Republic's tactical readouts, medical settings, and wanted posters in the Jedi archives. Distinctive uses included tattoos on clone troopers like Sketch and Kix, and on armor by troopers like Pawns and Fives. The electroproton bomb used during the Battle of Malastare carried Arabesh warnings and instructions. Buildings and advertisements also prominently displayed Arabesh, including notable locations like Crystal Skull on Lego and Chalman Spaceport Cantina on Tatooine. Arabesh encompassed consonants, vowels, digraphs, and punctuations, and could be written left to right or top to bottom. Letters were uniformly sized, with occasional mirror inversions for capital letters. The symbol for Republic credit, Resh, featured two vertical lines through its upper half, and Arabesh characters were also used for musical keys, like Kresh. Despite having glyphs for High Galactic digraphs, Arabesh often ignored these representations. For example, the oo sound, denoted by Orinth in High Galactic, was frequently rendered with double osk in Arabesh. Similarly, Thesh was often replaced with a combination of trill and herf, and Sherak and Shen were commonly represented by combinations of Kresh and herf, and Senth and herf, respectively. Old Tyanese.
Tyanese, also known as Old Tyanese, was the primary language of the Tyan cluster before it was supplanted by Galactic Basic Standard. By the final centuries of the Galactic Republic, Tyanese had largely fallen out of general use, relegated mainly to naming conventions. Its alphabetic script was employed by various organizations, including the Galactic Empire, which utilized its letters for squadron designations. In Old Tyanese, the term Vigo meant nephew and was later adopted as a rank within Black Sun Criminal Syndicate. Some examples of Old Tyanese letters being used more widely are Delta and Omega squads, clone commando units during the Clone Wars, and Lambda-class shuttles, popular shuttles used by the Empire to move high-ranking personnel.
Other variations. Trade Federation Basic was an alphabetic script used primarily by the Trade Federation, adapted from the Neimoidian language, Pakpak, which itself had replaced the old Duriz syllabary due to its unique phonetic sounds. This script emerged as Neimoidians began learning Galactic Basic Standard while retaining their traditional writing system. Initially, the script appeared in various inscriptions, including crates found on planets like Hutta and Korriban, but often indecipherable. By 350 BBY, as the Neimoidians became influential within the Trade Federation, their script gained prominence, becoming known as Trade Federation Basic. Throughout the Clone Wars, Trade Federation Basic was visible in numerous contexts, including battle droid identification numbers, military displays, and even Jedi Temple blueprints. For instance, it was used to label items and locations during battles and on the flagship Invisible Hand. Its characters and numerals often appeared on droid markings, tactical screens, and various signage across the galaxy. Imperial Basic served as the official language of both the Galactic Empire and the Imperial Remnant. Wedge Antilles observed that Imperial Basic was heavily accented compared to the Galactic Basic Standard spoken by New Republic forces. Galactic Sign Language, GSL for short, was a non-verbal communication system. Wookiees were familiar with many of its basic gestures. Other notable languages.
Mandoa, or Mandalorian, is the primary language of the Mandalorian culture, evolving from the ancient Tong language on Coruscant. While rooted in Tong, Mandoa developed unique characteristics over time. The language is distinguished by its lack of grammatical cases, simple verb forms, and flexible rules for forming adjectives. It does not require standard spelling or punctuation. Variations are common. Mandoa is agglutinative, often combining words to create new terms such as Dar Jedi, meaning Sith, from Dar, no longer, and Jeti, Jedi. Despite its origins, Mandoa differs from other galactic languages in many ways. The language's complexity is manageable for basic speakers, though it lacks a passive verb form and has simplified tense expression. Nouns have no gender or ending vowels, and plurals are formed by adding e or se based on the final letter. Verbs typically end in ar, or, with terminal vowels often dropped in speech and writing. Mandoa uses word order to indicate meaning and has a gender-neutral structure. Pronouns and gender are implied by context, with specific adjectives used when needed. Questions are formed with the prefix xian, and commands or negations followed straightforward patterns. Written Mandoa uses a 26-character alphabet and a base 10 numeral system, though it includes letters not found in spoken Mandoa for ease of transliteration. Traditional Mandalorians, like Jango Fett, used written Mandoa for communication and documentation, while the new Mandalorians often translated it directly onto Basic, using Arabesh numerals for scientific purposes.
Can you speak Bachi?
Of course I can, sir. It's like a second language to me. I'm as
Yeah, all
fluent
right,
in...
shut up. I'll take this
Shutting
one.
up, sir.
Luke!
Bachi. Bachi was a trade language developed by the Baobab merchant fleet, designed to facilitate communication among starcraft pilots, crews, and support personnel from diverse species. Comprising elements from multiple languages, it served as a common tongue for interplanetary trade. While not widely spoken, experienced pilots and spacers often knew a few Bachi phrases to bridge communication gaps with those who didn't share their native language. The Baobab merchant fleet, a renowned trading fleet established long before the Galactic Empire, was famed for its extensive knowledge repository, the Baobab Archives. During the rise of the Galactic Empire, the Baobab struggled to keep their fleet independent, fearing the fate of the Trade Federation.
Binary, or droid speak, was the language used by droids, composed of electronic sounds like beeps, bloops, buzzes, chirps, whines, and whistles. These sounds encoded both numbers and words. All droids could understand and produce binary. Certain individuals, such as Revan, Kit Fisto, and Anakin Skywalker, gained some fluency in it through extensive interactions with droids, although they could not synthesize the language. Generally, an ascending whistle signified affirmation, while a descending one indicated negation. Expert slicers like Zecharias Gent could interpret binary with remarkable accuracy. The language was also used by spacers, pilots, and officers to communicate with droids and authenticate their identities for planetary access. Binary was preceded by the archaic C-Bell 1, a primitive droid language with only two sounds for yes and no. The droid speak standard was later established by industrial automatons astromech droids and became widely adopted across various manufacturers who paid a licensing fee to use it. The development of modern droid speak is credited to cyber philologist Yapiro Baobab, who created a program around 200 BBY that enabled droids to convey complex concepts beyond simple affirmations and negations. His program, Bab Prime, allowed droids to exchange sensory data and eventually evolved into Bab Neo, or Babno, following an update that imbued droids with personality traits. This new layer of code acted like a virus, giving droids distinct personalities ranging from arrogance to camaraderie. While some droid owners embraced this new mode of interaction, others preferred to erase the personality code from their droids. ASP labor droids, with their limited vocabulary, continued using the form of C-Bell 1 even after the advent of more advanced droid speak, maintaining a straightforward and scientific communication style.
Sherak. Sherak, or Wookiee speak, was the primary trade language of Wookiees, known as the tongue of the tree people in BASIC. While it was not the only Wookiee language, Sherak was the most commonly understood by non-Wookiees, who often mistakenly believed it to be the sole Wookiee language. To outsiders, Sherak might have sounded like a series of animalistic noises, barks, roars, growls, and moans, conveying primarily emotion. However, Sherak was as complex and expressive as BASIC. The structure of the Wookiee throat made Sherak extremely difficult for most non-Wookiees to pronounce. The language relied on sounds produced from the throat and back of the mouth, with minimal lip or tongue movement. As a result, Sherak words and names were often transliterated into forms more accessible to non-Wookiee speakers. Conversely, Wookiees typically found Basic challenging to speak, necessitating bilingual communication for interspecies interactions. Wookiees would speak Sherak while others would speak Basic. Some Wookiees, such as Ambassador Ral Rachin, had speech impediments that made their Sherak more understandable to Basic speakers, facilitating direct communication without a translator. Sherak had an extensive vocabulary, including over 150 words for wood and 15 distinct terms for violence. However, it was often considered insufficient for technical discussions. For such topics, the Thykaran dialect was preferred, which many Wookiees could switch to with ease. Other Wookiee languages, Zasik was native to the Wartaki Islands on Kashyyyk and neighboring coastal regions. While Sherak served as the common language for trade and travel, Zasik became a secret language among the Wookiee underground during Imperial occupation of their planet.
Huttese, the native tongue of the Hutts, ranked as the second most prevalent language in the galaxy following Galactic Basic. It functioned as the lingua franca within Hutt space and extended to much of the surrounding territories. The language's widespread use was a direct result of the Hutt's vast commercial and criminal influence across the galaxy. As a widely used language in intergalactic communication, Huttese was promoted through popular courses like those offered by the Baobab School of Speed Learning. Nimbinels, whose snout structure facilitated Huttese articulation, became fluent in the language and adopted it as a semi-official tongue on Nimban. Huttese also became a primary language for Rhodians and Toydarians, the latter of whom had long-standing commercial ties with the Hutts. On Tatooine and other Hutt-controlled worlds, Huttese was a dominant language. Despite fluency in Galactic Basic, the Hutts preferred Huttese, considering it superior and relying on protocol droids for translation. Since the Third Battle of Vontor, Huttese spread among the Hutt-dominated species, Niktos, Klatooinians, and Vodrins. While Klatooinians and Vodrins abandoned their native languages for Huttese, Niktos preserved their tongue, learning Huttese as a second language. Linguistically, Huttese featured words ending in A, palatalized I, and duplicated expressions like raka raka. The language also lacked polite terms such as please and thank you.
Tusken. Tusken was the language of the Sand People on Tatooine, often perceived as primitive due to its harsh, guttural sounds that resembled shrieking, hollering, grunts, growls, and honks. Despite its raw auditory impression, Tusken was a complex language, challenging for non-Sand people to master. Mastery of Tusken required a considerable amount of phlegm, and protocol droids could be equipped with specialized language pack for fluency. Tusken lacked a written form and relied solely on oral tradition. Its structure was predominantly consonant-based. Other forms of communication.
Jawaese was the native language of the Jawa species from Tatooine, characterized by its use of seemingly meaningless syllables and pheromone-based scents to convey meaning. These scents were crucial for understanding as they revealed the Jawa's mood and intent. Jawaese was inherently variable, with its random syllables forming a complex, scent-dependent communication system. Due to their frequent interactions with other species, Jawas developed the Jawa trade language. This simplified version of Jawaese was designed for easier communication with humans and other species, eliminating the need for pheromones. Unlike the harsh barking of the Tusken Raiders, the Jawa trade language was spoken rapidly and described as jabbering, making it more accessible for humans to learn. Of course, there are nigh infinite forms of communication across species, including various forms of body language, hand signs, pheromonal communication, psychic communication, and telepathy, as well as the use of other non-universal organs, such as the movement of antennae and tendrils. Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
This is Jordan.
And we're currently on the planet of Manda, exploring the Baobab archives, looking into everything, languages, and linguistics.
Indeed. But before we get into that, I want to thank all of our new supporting listeners, which is one. Just one new guy. House of Steve, thank you for becoming a patron member, supporting member of the show. Just a reminder that if anyone wants to join up on the Patreon, patreon.com/StarLords, for only $3 a month, you get access to all the bonus episodes. And we also have added an extra tier for $5 a month. Now, we already had some $5 a month patron supporters, and you will get this benefit, but I am adding ad-free listening to the episode. So if you are part of the $5 tier, you get ad-free listening. And I did add a Jedi Master tier, which is $7 in case anyone is interested, but I don't have any extra benefits. Sorry. But if you just wanted to...
You get to be called a Jedi Master.
Yeah. If you just want to support the show a little extra, you're totally welcome to do that. But yeah, the $5 membership will get you both access to the bonus episodes as well as ad-free listening to the episodes, because I know ads can be annoying, and if you're paying that much, you definitely get the privilege of skipping those. Anyways, so thank you to all of our patrons for supporting us and helping to keep this bucket of bolts flying. You can also do single buys of episodes on Patreon, bonus episodes that is. Quick note about Spotify. We have changed our platform which we host the podcast on, and we are no longer doing the Spotify subscriptions, unfortunately. Sorry, I know we did have a few those Spotify subscribers, but for the moment I'm unable to do that, so you're just gonna have to go, if you want the bonus episodes, the only way at the moment is to go through Patreon. So all right. And on that note, I did just want to make a quick little announcement that we have joined a new podcast network called Believe, BLEAV. And they host a number of podcasts, a lot of sports podcasts, so if you're into that. But they also have a small contingency of hobby podcasts, which they're trying to grow their repertoire. And we've been talking back and forth with them for the last few weeks and have decided to bite the bullet and join up with them. But they've been really good guys. So far, my experience has been positive with them. So check out the Believe Podcast Network for their other podcasts if you want to support them and support them as they support us. So big thanks to the Believe guys for believing in us. Anyways, you can also do, if you want to support the show as well, we take single donations via PayPal at starlorspodcast@gmail.com, and you can buy merch on Redbubble. So just look through our link in the description of the show, and you can find the merch website on Redbubble's, I think, /StarLords or something. Also, help us spread the show. If you like the show, if you know people who would like the show, share the show on social media, friends groups you're in, as well as rating and reviewing the show. That helps us to get caught up in the algorithm and get into more ears. Follow us on social media and get in touch. We love to hear from everyone. Discord link is in the description. If you are getting through on a expired link, just let us know. We'll give you the updated one. All the newer episodes should have the correct link, and I did try and update everything. So if you go to our link tree, you shouldn't have an issue with getting into the Discord invite link. Anyways, but if you do have any troubles with that, just reach out to us personally. We are on Instagram at starlordspodcast.com. Follow us there, x.com, starlords, Facebook, facebook.com/starlords, and email us, starlordspodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, corrections, discussion points, comments, yada, 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 you can send us emails there. Also, we would love to see your Star Wars collections, your fan fictions, any headcanon, or in-universe ads. We also like that. If you've got scripts or even audio of an in-universe ad, we will definitely put it on the show. And we like to have fun with those in-universe ads. Anyways, send us all your cool Star Wars stuff and, be a part of the community and join up with us. Anything else I missed there, Christian?
No, I think that covers it all.
Sounds good. Languages.
Linguistics, philology. This is probably going to be a pretty niche episode. I know there's some hardcore language nerds out there that are really into this stuff, and most other people could not care less.
Yeah.
Could care less. Could not care less.
Linguistics is actually like kind of an interesting topic in general. So, getting into the Star Wars universe, it is niche, but it is kind of cool.
Yeah. So the big thing I love about the whole episode is a lot of this is almost retconning reasons why words appear as they do in the fiction. So a big thing a lot of Star Wars fans are familiar with is Arabesh, the fictional written word of the Star Wars galaxy. But then it gets hard to explain how ships like X-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings,
Y-Wings,
C-3PO, R2-D2, and other number and letter-based names based on like the English alphabet and English number, well, I guess it's Arabic number system, work, right? Like there's kind of was an inconsistency there. And then things like Omega Squad and Delta Squad. Where does the Greek alphabet come into the Star Wars mythos, right?
Yeah.
So this is just a way to explain all that away. So they created like old languages, like old Tyanese to be like the Greek letters.
Yeah.
And High Galactic to explain like words written in the Latin alphabet and everything else. Personally, I love it as an explanation system. And the fact that they even address it altogether. It could be something that they just totally ignore and like don't ask questions. But it is cool that they explain it all. On that note, it's also cool that they even account for accents in basic/English. So you have people that speak with like New Zealander accents, like Tamara Morrison, right?
Yeah.
So then they create these subdialects that also explain why these actors sound British or they sound American. Obviously, Britain and America don't exist in Star Wars.
Yeah, like Tarkin sounds like British royalty.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like that British, like royal family accent.
Yeah,
that's very distinct.
That's why they describe it as like a posh accent and things, right? So there's a little bit of a jab at like the real world connotations with a lot of those accents and things.
Yeah,
which I find hilarious.
Yeah,
but again, it's cool that they go out of their way to explain it. Yeah. Truthfully, I've been wanting to do this episode for a long time because I knew all this stuff existed, but it's like one of those subtleties that, like, unless you're really deep into Star Wars, completely would not even pay attention to. This and Clone Troopers are the two reasons I started this podcast.
Almost 100 episodes in, and
finally got here. Yeah. Other examples too of using like the Latin alphabet. Mission Vau calls Zalbar Big Z again. Doesn't make sense without having that Latin script to make it work.
Yeah.
It also gets kind of odd to explain because it is based around English. Obviously, Star Wars was written in English for an English audience to begin with. English the language, not English the people. So I don't know how a lot of this translates into, let's say, Spanish or Hindi, for example. Like,
or even like China. I know like Star Wars is big in China too. So it's like, how do you,
like the basic,
Mandarin?
Right. Basic becomes Mandarin and it becomes whatever the language of the listener, the viewer is.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone is speaking.
Right.
But then you run into conflicts of like, okay, then you have to transpose, let's say, I forget what it's, Hindi script then becomes like what would be High Galactic or.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it starts to get confusing when you're like, translating into other languages, right?
It's like, yeah, Galactic Basic is there's like a theory of relativity to it.
Yeah. And that's never explicitly written. I never read any sources on it.
No.
But like everything
you would by necessity, you kind of have to every indigenous or language that you're listening in becomes
the basic. Yeah. Lord of the Rings has a very similar thing. But there's Tolkien being a philologist was a lot more into how that actually translates and how we interpret it or we receive it in like what's called Westernese and things like that. But that's kind of the
I know Tolkien like actually created multiple languages in his
built the universe to explain the languages he built. The language is really the meat of what he was creating. Like
so there's that. Like I know some other properties like Star Trek also have fully fleshed out languages.
Klingon.
Yeah, like Klingon. I don't know if there's anything like that in Star Wars where like people have developed the entire language, the alphabet, and like a huge vocabulary.
I remember taking out a library book a long time ago with Huttese.
Oh, really?
And I don't remember if it was fully fleshed out or like a lot of it fleshed out. And how much of that was considered canon or not. But it was like a whole like Huttese dictionary.
Someone should definitely reach out to us if they're familiar with like people going to fan conventions and speaking.
Yeah. The other closest one would be Mandoa, which isn't fully fleshed out, but it is quite heavily invested in by
it is
by people who are big Mandalorian fans. Mando stands.
Yeah. I feel like probably the big three that we just mentioned is like Mandoa, Huttese, and what else did we mention? Didn't we mention a third? No.
Basic?
No, not basic. I was thinking of a different one. Anyways, I digress.
Sherak?
Yeah, Sherak. yeah. Sorry. That was the one I was thinking. Sherak is like the three that are kind of talked about the most and like actually addressed a lot in the novelizations and whatnot.
Yeah. And to a lesser extent, I guess, binary, like R2's language, because it's just always in the background. But typically the audience has a way of interpretation, either through inflection or through C-3PO or another character that speaks back, and you're only actually getting one side of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then you're left to imagine what is actually being said.
Now, sorry, on that note, I seem to remember in Empire Strikes Back when Luke is flying to Dagobah, he's talking in his X-Wing to R2-D2. Was it R2-D2's speech being transcribed on his viewer
on his
screen?
cockpit,
Okay. So, but he didn't necessarily know what R2 was saying.
I always imagined it was because you're in space and you can't hear the robot outside your ship.
But there's other moments where like Luke seems to understand what he's saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is like in that case he couldn't physically hear the beeps and boops, so he had it telegraphed to a screen. But I could be wrong because they don't explicitly say whether like what characters can or cannot understand binary. Or that people roughly understand what it means, but maybe not exactly. So
true.
Yeah. But yeah, just that's really all I had for that. Do you want to get into the mailbag?
Yeah, sure. So we had a question from a patron member, Ian. He said, and I'll just quote him here, "I did have one question. I'm a little older than you guys, born in 1974. But when I was first reading the EU with Heir to the Empire, I would imagine if it were to become a movie, who would play the new characters? This is a bit dated, but for example, Captain Pelion, I had as Bob Hopkins. Talon Card, I had Kevin Kline, and Mara Jade, I had Nicole Kidman. Like I said, dated. Just wondering if you guys had done the same. I haven't, but I like the thought experiment.
The practice of fan casting.
Yeah. Who would we have in our cast for Heir to the Empire? Okay, so I have a couple ideas. Again, I'm not sure if they're perfect. You know, even looking at this list, I'm not super. He is a little older than me, so I do remember Kevin Kline, but I don't recall Bob Hopkins or what he was in.
Who's Nicole Kidman?
Yeah, who's Nicole?
No, I'm
I
just
do.
kidding.
I am aware of Nicole Kidman,
Yeah.
but I'm not convinced Nicole Kidman would be a Mara Jade.
I think. So this is the other question you have to ask yourself: is when are we projecting ourselves back into the 70s? Are we like talking if it was made today?
No, the 90s when the books came out. So that's probably when the timeline he's thinking is.
Sure, but like if you're fan casting again, are you thinking whatever period, or are you thinking like if they made the movie tomorrow, who should be in it?
To me, I'm thinking if they made the movie tomorrow. But yeah, like I get it. I think that's what he's asking is like if they made it today, what would who would be the fan cast? So for me, I think a good who would be a decent Pelion. I kind of have two who I think might be good, and my first one is Gary Oldman. I think he'd make a good Pelion, and my other one is maybe Bryan Cranston would make a good
that's an interesting take.
Pelion. Yeah, you kind of have to have like older, seasoned guys who are kind of rough around the edges, maybe. But those would be like my two Pelion picks. I don't know. Thrawn is a little bit harder but easier in the sense that it could be anyone because of the makeup and stuff.
Yeah,
like
you could even make him CGI and just have someone do the voice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I who's the Thrawn actor now in the Ahsoka series?
Mickelson, is it? No,
not. Let me look it up. Thrawn actor. Yeah. Oh, Lars Mikkelsen. Yeah. So Lars Mikkelsen is the actor. And, he's not bad. I think his face is okay for it.
I think he lacks a certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. I don't like how they kind of he kind of has like a bit of a pot belly.
Yeah.
I feel like the original Thrawn is like very lean, and
tall, and like almost regal looking.
Yeah.
He doesn't give that impression from his live action.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of how he's depicted. I guess it could be worse, but
yeah, maybe someone like Benedict Cumberbatch's like build.
Yeah.
Someone like that.
Yeah, he might not even be that bad of a
choice.
Thrawn. Yeah. Maybe he's a little too young for like the heir to the
Again,
Empire
it depends
Thrawn.
on when you're talking.
Yeah.
Because like even for Mara Jade casting, are we casting a Mara Jade that's in line with Luke's age now?
Yeah.
Or would she be someone who's like young Mara Jade, right? So
totally.
Who again, I also can't think of any.
So I did have one idea for a Mara Jade, but again, some of these actresses, I hate to say it, are almost too old now for to be Mara Jade. Like Evangeline Lilly could be like a good, but she's probably too old at this point to play, because Mara Jade would have been no older than 30, and they're probably younger because really Luke
is
by
18.
Return of the Jedi, Luke is only like what, 23, 24.
Yeah, because he's 18 in a New Hope,
so we're talking 5 years after Return of the, so he's like 29, 30, right? So
pretty young.
Yeah, he's still like not that old. So Evangeline. The other one I was thinking is like who I think would be good, and she's already has some connection with the Star Wars universe, is Bryce Dallas Howard. I think she kind of has the look for it, but
you can just dye people's hair red too.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not limited by.
No, but I think even in like the depictions of like the face structure and stuff,
sure,
I think she kind of has it. But again, probably too old to be Mara Jade at this point. Sorry, ladies.
Unless they're getting with this current version of Luke, who's an old man, but also he's dead and never brought Mara Jade up. So does she exist?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe people who are like more up to tune on the like who the new and up and coming actors and actresses who could play good ones. If Disney had its way, it would probably be some like black or Indian actress who resembles Mara Jade in no way, shape, or form. Anyways, but hopefully, in some ways, hopefully Disney just doesn't recreate any of our favorite characters and just leaves them all alone. Anyway, also from the mailbag today, we had a correction. Oh
no.
Yeah, we actually did definitely miss this one. And I listened to the clip, and he's totally right. This is from Snake and Nape on Discord, and we had mentioned that Wedge Antilles was from Alderaan on our Alderaan episode that came out previous to this episode. And Wedge Antilles is Corellian. He's not.
We did this too with with what's her name? Chandrilin.
Oh, with who? What's her name?
Mon Mothma.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Corellia, Chandrilla, and Alderaan are all the same place to me, so I don't.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely Wedge is from Corellia, not Alderaan. We did say that. And, thank you, Snake and Nate, for pointing that out. He also did. He had some quibbles with our discussion on Japan's defense force. Well, I think it was mostly me who characterized it as more of like a police force that was like somewhat militarized.
Yeah.
And this almost became a little bit of a debate in the actual Discord group because there were other people who sort of, not exactly, yeah, sure. But it was like Japan's. They are called the Japanese Defense Force or something to that effect. And they are like militarized. They are fully like they're trained for military combat. They have military grade weapons and gear. They don't, as far as I can tell, certain divisions of them do not engage in like domestic policing. So that is true. However, they're not technically an army. So an army, by the technical definition, is a military force that is abroad. So you actually don't become an army until you this is kind of a stupid little rabbit hole I went on. You don't become a like standing army until you're ready to like go and invade another country or something. So there's some technicalities here, but there was a bunch of rules put on them about what kind of military they were allowed to have, and they're basically a lot of it could just be semantics, so they've kind of found all these loopholes, and it really is a military, but they don't have any foreign bases anywhere in the world. They're all stationed in Japan. They aren't allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah,
other
I remember
than
it was a
Japan.
huge controversy when they tried to get pulled into some American conflicts.
Yeah,
and the Japanese people were like, we're not supposed to leave Japan, essentially.
Yeah. And they weren't supposed to leave Japan specifically because the Americans told them at the end of World War II that like you're not allowed to leave
There
Japan.
is another movement, of course, with every country that is in favor of resurrecting a normal standing Japanese military, but it comes like everything about Imperial Japan kind of left a bad taste in the Asian diaspora of them having a standing force. So
so we probably overstated that they're not just like policemen. They're
if Japan ever got invaded, they have a standing force to fight them, but they're not supposed to engage in expeditionary actions.
Yeah, and they're not even supposed to like. So they have engaged in some like humanitarian stuff, but it's more just like logistical, like
we'll help
transport,
get food into a country that's war torn.
They're not supposed to go. They're not allowed to go for any like military reason, even for their allies. So anyways, just a clarification on that. But otherwise, that's all I had for today. Don't forget to reach out to us. Send us a message, direct message if you so please. Any corrections, fan fiction, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you guys. Follow us on the social medias, and we will see you next time.